this video, I want to talk to you about the anti-stress benefits of tonic herbs. Now, before we dive into the actual usage of tonic herbs, let's talk a little bit about what stress is and what happens to the body when we experience excessive stress. Now, we live in a pretty stressful world today. If you ask most people, they'll probably tell you that they're stressed on a pretty regular basis, or that they've at least experienced stress sometime in their life. So most of us know what stress is, at least on a feeling or an intuitive level. We often use a variety of different words to describe the feelings of stress, such as being depressed, anxious, or stressed out, feeling pressured, or sometimes we even associate feeling stressed with pain. However, then there's those rare people that will tell you that they're actually not that stressed out and they don't experience much stress. So that just goes to show you that stress is not a default, it is not a destiny, but there is a lot of chances for stress in the modern world. And once we get into what stress is on an anatomical level, we'll understand the reason for this. Then we'll also be able to understand how we can actually become more like that rare person who doesn't feel so stressed out and build an actual resilience or resistance to stress. So now often we hear people talking about stress management and they recommend reducing your stress. However, I want to just say right now in this video that this is really only half the battle, and that actually reducing or trying to eliminate all stress is not the long-term solution. And we've all seen or at least heard about people that, totally remove themselves from the social world and try to eliminate all stressors from their lives, whether that's a story of a Himalayan monk, somebody who ran away to be a hermit away from the modern world, or people who are generally just more recluse and try to avoid all social pressure at any given time. However, while this may decrease your likelihood of coming in contact with stress, it's not actually going to build your resistance to stress. And even if it were a possibility to avoid and eliminate all stress from your life and remove all source of it, that wouldn't really be the best idea anyways. And the most basic reason for that is stress can actually build strength, immunity, and resistance. However, the real secret is finding the appropriate dosage of stress to build up our immunity and our overall resistance and tolerance to life, which is obviously a very useful tool to have if you wish to fully engage in the human experience of life. As I mentioned earlier, life can be a stressful thing. However, the people that do best and the people that thrive and experience the best lives typically have a higher threshold for stress. They can confront many experiences without being defeated. And that's what I want to help you do here in this video. So to summarize here, the goal is not to eliminate or reduce all stress. That would actually just lead to a weak immune system or a weak overall central nervous system, which is very similar to the germ theory, and that by eliminating and killing off all germs and bacteria, that will be healthier. But if anything, what we've come to realize through this experimentation is that killing off all germs and bacteria actually just decreases our immune system and makes us more likely to experience autoimmune issues or get bacterial or viral infections. And that the real secret to a strong immune system isn't to kill off all bacteria, but to actually just increase our immunity to bacteria and to eliminate only the very harmful, deadly, pathogenic bacteria, of course, but to overall just have a better balance of probiotic bacteria to bad bacteria, which you hear me talk about a lot here. And the same idea or philosophy can be applied to all areas of stress. So then the real secret or formula to improving your resistance to stress or managing your stress is to get rid of the very unnecessary, very harmful stressors for your life that aren't doing you much good, and focus on building up a tolerance to good stresses, or what we call eustress. And a eustress is a good stress. It's something like exercise, getting outside and playing in the dirt, jumping in cold water. These are things that are considered stressors, but they actually build up our resistance and our tolerance and our overall immunity. So these are good stressors. And so this brings us to the real formula for stress management, which is to, of course, eliminate any very negative, very harmful, unnecessary stressors. So obviously you don't want to put yourself in a dangerous, life-threatening situation on a daily basis. So you want to get rid of the obvious, dangerous, or harmful stressors. But then from that point, we want to utilize situations to increase our tolerance to stress. And this will help us build an overall resilience or resistance to stress. That way, the ultimate goal, we do not succumb in the face of stress. So now the other thing we need to look at in a bit more detail is what stress is exactly. Because really stress can occur in an infinite amount of ways. Stress can come at all different levels. It happens all around us, and really depending on how you view a situation, it can be stressful or not. So on the most basic anatomical level, what we find in any stressful condition or situation is two opposing forces. In physics, stress is defined as force, counterforce, and they're opposing each other with an equal amount of power. And this is why we often experience pain or pressure when we're going through a stressful situation. So really, you could look at stress as being no more than a conflict, a problem, or an incredible amount of pressure. And this is why we often feel a great deal of pressure when we're in stressful situations. So really, stress is just a pressure. And that could come about through depression, repression, oppression, suppression, the need to impress people. So it can manifest in all these different ways in the social world, causing mental and emotional stress. So if you're depressing your emotions or repressing or suppressing your emotions and your thoughts and ideas, that can lead to an internal mental and emotional stress. Also, if you feel the need to constantly impress people, that can be a stress as well. But then we have other varieties of stress where we see this conflict or these counterforce, and that can come about through our diet and nutrition. So eating a food or a diet that causes a biochemical or biological stress in the body. So that would come about through eating a food that your body does not want, it doesn't like, it doesn't metabolize properly. This will create an internal nutritional or biochemical stress in your body because you're consuming something that the body does not want, hence the opposition or the counter forces. So we also see stress manifest in other ways. There's the obvious physical stress. So physical trauma can be a stress. That could be getting in a fight, stubbing your toe, or getting in some sort of traumatic accident. That can be stress. Stress can also manifest thermogenically. Things like sunburn or too much exposure to heat or too cold, so frostbite could be a stress. Then we have electromagnetic stresses in the modern world. Those come from the EMFs, the electromagnetic fields from all the electronics around us, which creates an internal stress in the body. And then of course there's chemical stress, which basically comes about through the consumption or interaction with chemicals or pollutants in our food, air, water, and our external environment. So a chemical stress can happen as well. That could also be from consuming a drug or something like alcohol or cigarettes. So as you can see, stress manifests in an infinite amount of ways. However, there's different categories of stress. However, typically what we find is the most common forms of stress that we see are the mental and emotional stress and the physical and chemical stress. And that's really because we live in a world today that puts a lot of pressure on us, financially, socially, in our relationships, even in the world at large. There's wars going on for hundreds of years that create an internal mental and emotional stress for many people and families. So it probably goes without saying that the social world can be a stressful place to live in. But then we see physical and chemical stress happening a lot as well. We live in now a otherwise very toxic or polluted world. Our water contains many chemicals, heavy metals. Now it's even showing that some of the water supplies contain pharmaceutical drugs, birth control residues, antibiotic residues, and these things create chemical stress in the body. Our food is not of the best quality anymore. Our air has been depleted of this quality as well. So nutritionally, chemically, and of course physically, there's a lot of stress as well. So now let's talk about using tonic herbs to manage these two primary categories of stress, be it the mental and emotional stress and the physical and chemical stress. And tonic herbs are a really incredible tool for this, and this is perhaps their importance in the modern world today. So let's talk about a few specific herbs that can really help us manage stress and also build our resilience to stress. So what happens physically or biochemically in the body when we experience stress is the body secretes tons of stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. And these hormones actually help us survive and overcome stress. So they're very good in that way. They're sort of survival hormones. However, when secreted too often for too long, they disrupt our other cycles in our body. So they can lead to things like blood sugar imbalance, irregulated blood pressure, high triglyceride levels, and other imbalances in our hormonal system. So one of the goals then is to decrease the amount of adrenaline and cortisol that's surging through our body at any given time, which, as I mentioned, lead to tons of different issues in the metabolic metabolic system. It messes up our adrenal and thyroid glands. It can greatly inhibit good digestive function and overall weaken our immune system. So one of the first things that we could do is utilize the benefits of adaptogen herbs. And there are a few really great adaptogen herbs that are known to decrease the amount of stress hormones in your body. They're specifically great at lowering cortisol, which can lead to issues like weak immunity and overall weak adrenal function. And if you have too much cortisol surging through your blood at any given time, then eventually what happens is you run into the issue of not secreting enough cortisol. So if the adrenals become fatigued from overworking, then they can start underperforming, leading to low cortisol production, which leads to chronic inflammation in the body, considering the fact that cortisol is an anti-inflammatory hormone. But also, it is cortisol and adrenaline that give you the drive to overcome stressful situations. So you need cortisol and adrenaline to be able to get through a stressful situation and not succumb to it. However, if you're overproducing these hormones, then what happens is they become fatigued and you have an underproduction of these hormones. So the goal then is to ultimately be able to choose your battles wisely. If you are viewing every situation in life, every day, all day long as a stressful situation, then you put your body in a constant state of fight or flight mode, constantly secreting these stress hormones, and eventually you become fatigued and you can no longer produce the sufficient amount of stress hormones you need to overcome stressful situations. So there are a few herbs now that can greatly help you do this. Herbs classified as adaptogen chi tonics, such as ginseng, astragalus, and gynostemma, help your body adapt more intelligently to stressful situations. They're specifically great at lowering excess cortisol. This way your adrenals and thyroid do not become fatigued. So these herbs contain very special plant saponins that basically help your body regulate. So these are very useful in the face of stress because they help your body achieve balance. So the reason that these are very useful, because as mentioned, once you go into a stress response, many other areas of your body become affected physiologically. So things like immune function, blood pressure, blood sugar, your cholesterol and triglyceride levels, and other areas of your metabolic system start to become affected because of the secretion of stress hormone. And these adaptogenic chi tonics are really great at regulating these other systems, so that way you don't run into the negative side effects of stress, such as irregulated blood pressure, blood sugar issues, and potential low immunity. And from the traditional Chinese medicine perspective, as chi tonics, these herbs give you vitality. So what happens in a stressful situation is you become depleted of your vitality or your chi, and if this keeps reoccurring over a long period of time, what happens is you become deficient in chi and you start to go into your reserve of energy known as jing. And it is your jing energy that is your essence or life force. And it's really once you start to become jing depleted that you run into issues like chronic disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, and other more serious issues with your immune system. So as an adaptogenic chi tonic, it will give you the daily vitality to confront stressful situations, keep your entire metabolic system in alternating cycles balanced and immune to stressful situations while protecting your essence or your jing energy. So there are many different types of adaptogenic chi tonics. As I said, astragalus, ginseng, gynostemma are probably the top herbs for doing this. But you can also utilize other adaptogenic herbs like holy basil, ashwagandha, and rhodiola, and even ho shou wu. Now, depending on how much stress you've encountered or how stressed out you are, you may want to utilize other herbs as well. Ho shou wu and romani are really great jing tonics that help replenish jing. So if you've been stressed out for a long time, it is likely that you've dipped into that battery pack or savings account of energy, and you'll want to start by replenishing that jing energy and then cultivating more chi energy so you have the daily energy to overcome stressful situations. Now, I just want to end here by saying that herbs are not going to take away the cause or root cause of mental and emotional stress, because that is really just created from our thoughts or our viewpoints. When it comes to mental and emotional stress, what is causing that is a conflict of interest, a conflict of ideas, thoughts, intentions, even identities. And this creates a lot of the pressure mentally and emotionally. As far as emotion goes, stress comes about when we resist emotion. So if you're resisting feeling angry, depressed, sad, fearful, then those emotions persist and you'll really start to feel it. And if you've ever let yourself have a good cry, you know how relieving that is. And really that's because you're just letting go of the pressure. You're not resisting yourself from feeling an emotion. So adaptogens aren't going to help change your thoughts that are creating your emotions. They can't go in and tell you to stop resisting emotion and just let yourself cry or let yourself get angry or accept and be okay with feeling afraid. They're not going to do this on a mental or a theta level. However, what they will do is help manage and regulate the hormonal response to whatever you're thinking and feeling. And really that's because hormones are just an expression of your consciousness. So when you're afraid or you have the idea that you need to fight for your life, then you secrete stress hormones. If you have this idea that you cannot lose, you have to win, then you secrete hormones that make you feel more aggressive and angry. And if you have ideas of loss and that you can never win, then you secrete certain neurotransmitters and hormones that make you feel grief or sadness. So ultimately, no tonic herb or food can change our thoughts and how we're viewing the world, but they can be really great tools along the journey of basically mastering your mind and emotions. And that is because they do have incredible capabilities to manage your biology. So once you've had a very fearful thought or a sad or grief or apathetic thought, or you had some sort of anger in your life, or whatever the emotion, whatever the mental stress or conflict that you're in, they can help you on a biological level regulate your hormonal secretions. For example, often anxiety and worry is associated with an excessive amount of cortisol in the blood. So by bringing down cortisol with the use of tonic herbs, you're likely to feel less anxious and more calm and relaxed. Now keep in mind that even Taoists only supplemented and used tonic herbs as part of spiritual alchemy. So they weren't just utilizing tonic herbs, they were also cultivating a great deal of mental and emotional control or mastery. So these are herbs that are just supplemental. They can specifically help with feelings of anxiety or depression by regulating your hormones and your neurotransmitters, but ultimately supplement them with a great spiritual discipline. So if you are both utilizing the anti-stress benefits of adaptogenic chi tonics and pursuing a path of mental and emotional mastery, then you will without doubt cultivate the necessary energy you need to overcome stressful situations, to become resistant and tolerant to any situation, and thus experience greater peace, serenity, and of course optimal wellness. So if you've liked this video and you found it helpful, definitely give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. You can also check us out on Instagram at Vitagen Herbs, where we give away free tonic herbs on a weekly basis. And if you're interested in utilizing the anti-stress benefits of these adaptogenic chi tonics, then you can check out our shop by clicking the link below.